Stop the insanity. Get your focus back onto what really matters in life. Your family, your finances, your faith, and your future. Sit back, listen, and change the trajectory of your life. You are listening to the Money for Life podcast. Let's welcome your hosts, Teresa Kuhn and Rick Sapio.
Hey everyone, so excited to be here with you today, and we're going to talk about values-based decision making. And Rick, you are the man to talk about values-based decision making, and this is something that you learned very early on in your life, and so can't wait to get started.
Yeah, as everyone knows, in the background are the operating values of Money for Life, of our businesses and our families, of Teresa's life and her businesses, and those operating values are simplicity, probability, and leverage. We want you to have a simple life. We want you to have a high probability of raising great kids and having success and having fulfillment. And we want you to leverage your existing knowledge, your existing solid relationships, your existing technology. So this is one of those topics that exponentially utilizes simplicity, probability, and leverage as values-based decision making. So let me start with a quote. It says, until you're crystal clear on your purpose and crystal clear on your values, how the hell can you tell the difference between an opportunity and a distraction? The reality is you cannot. So why the heck isn't everybody listening or watching? Why haven't you sat down and wrote out, here's the values for my life, and here's the purpose of my life? Because I will assert every single problem that I have ever had, started when I chose to invite something or someone into my life that didn't align with my values. And the same is true for you. And you have to start with a decision that I'm going to come up with my list of values from which to make decisions. So this is so powerful for you and for us and for everybody listening and for our businesses, because we're living in a chaotic, distracted, non-functioning world. And what happens in that world is we all get aligned when each one of us lives a life in alignment with our values. So that's what values-based decision-making is all about. So what are you going to get out of this podcast? You're going to get a knowledge about how values-based decision-making works. You're going to realize that a lot of the mistakes that you made in the past were caused because you didn't have it. We're also going to teach you how to use your gut. Gut is G-U-T, and gut is God uttering truth. And your gut is informed by your values. So take it away, Teresa.
You're so fantastic at explaining that. I mean, you just articulate it so well, and it makes me so excited to hear it, because I have to be reminded constantly, and that's why we're constantly feeding ourselves this great information, and that's why we've chosen to teach it as well, because it's for us, number one, and for you, number two, right? The audience. And so a value that you taught me, it was not one of my values at all. Because I didn't even know about it. I mean, I knew about it intuitively, but I didn't understand it outside of me. And that was the value of simplicity. And that was a big, big value for you. But I'll share how I became focused on simplifying my life. And for those who know me, I'm a bit complicated. I've always been a bit complicated. When my son, my husband and I moved to Austin, Texas from Ohio, and we needed to choose a place to live, and we needed to choose a school for my son. And the school we chose was a beautiful school, so excited for him. And as we were looking around for a house to buy, knew that because my husband has an issue with his vision, and I'm the driver of the house, that taking my son to school was always going to be on me. And so as the realtor showing us all these different neighborhoods, and my question was, how far is traffic? How long is it going to take us to get to school and back? We ended up buying a house in the neighborhood where my son's school was at. And it ended being one of the smartest decisions that we made. It wasn't the house of my dreams. It wasn't, the neighborhood of my dreams. But what ended up happening, we were literally 3 minutes away from the school. And my son's friends, as we got to know them, I realized how complicated their lives were because they chose to live in neighborhoods far away because it was based on the home that they wanted, which there's nothing wrong with that. But the amount of commute time and struggling with traffic to school, to home, to after school activities complicated people's lives. And I then, years later met you, and you're talking about how simplicity was so important for you that your first job on Wall Street in New York City, you chose a place to live a block away from your business. When you moved to Dallas, you chose to live in a hotel that was in a complex where your office was, which sounds very strange. But your number one value was simplicity, and you were working a ton, and it was so important for you to have a simple life so you could live your purpose. Great story.
So isn't this incredible how you take a value and you start making decisions from it? You're demonstrating this. And why are all of us living such complicated lives? I believe is because we think that the next high or the next decision or the next app or the next Netflix series or the next toxic relationship that we haven't put a lot of thought in is going to give us something that we don't have. It's like a fear of missing out, FOMO. And the reality is, if you go back to the quote, we cannot make decisions on anything until we're clear on what our values are. And so you demonstrated it intuitively because simplicity is one of your core values clearly. But
Today wasn't
today,
back then, and I didn't realize that, right? But you brought it to consciousness for me, and you beat that drum on simplicity. You talk about simplicity all the time.
but T, I would argue that everybody, every human being has a deep desire for simplicity because I think it's one of our core values as human beings. Human beings we're not comfortable when there's chaos all around. When you think about the four areas that Money for Life is talking about, we want simplicity in those four areas. Don't we want a simple relationship with God? Don't we want a simple family life? Don't we want our finances to be simple? And don't we want our future to be simple? We don't want, when we look at our future, do we want chaos? So let me ask you all a question. If you don't want chaos in your life, why are you inviting chaos into your life? Every day, decisions that you make, you have to say, is this simplifying or is this complexifying? So let's keep going on this topic. I want to give you a story that will exemplify values-based decision making more than anything else. And then we want to give you an opportunity to think about just a starting point today is what is the primary value of your life? That from this point forward, if you put every decision through this filter to start with, it would make your life better. For some people, it's relationships and having powerful relationships. For some people, it's integrity. They want to eliminate anything out of their away from their life that isn't in alignment with integrity. And my definition of integrity is, what are you doing when nobody's looking? This is about 10 years ago. A friend of mine called me in hysterics. Her daughter was 16. She was the oldest of her four daughters. I think she was the oldest of four daughters. She's 16. She had been dating a drug addict for 2 years. The relationship was wreaking havoc on the family, total and complete havoc. Now, think about 2 years of the daughter vanishing, the daughter fighting with mom and dad, the daughter stealing from the house, the boyfriend being unpredictable. And I said, listen, let me just teach you values-based decision making and the doorman principle. Values-based decision making is sitting down with yourself or with people close to you and coming up with a list of values and what those values mean. Could be 4, it could be 7, it could be like my first value is simplicity, as we said. I'd like to keep everything in my life simple and seamless. The second one could be relationships. I want to be in relationship with people that contribute to the world in positive ways. So that's an example of 2. So I said, sit down with your daughter. She goes, no, we tried everything. We've been to psychotherapy. We've been to the police. I go, just trust me on this. Teacher, values-based decision-making, and the doorman principle. And I'm going to walk you through, just like I walked her through. Now, the doorman is an imaginary person that is holding a list of your values that acts as the gatekeeper of your life. So here's exactly what I said to her. I said, Julia, sit down with your daughter. Explain to her values-based decision making and ask her what her values are in her relationship, her primary relationship, like her husband or whatever. And the girl used words like, I want my relationship to be based on honesty and integrity and religion. She used the word religion. I'll never forget that word. And she used words like that. And then the mother sketched it out. And then she said, imagine if you had a doorman protecting your life. So that doorman didn't let anybody into your life unless they honored your values. And so she said the conversation lasted 5 minutes, and then that was it. What happened was, in this story, is 3 weeks later, I get this call back from Julia, and she's hysterically crying again. I'm like, oh, what happened? And she was crying. I'm getting emotional. I've been thinking about it. Tears of joy. She's like, you are not going to believe what happened. I was envisioning 10, 20, 30 years of chaos and abortion and jail time and all my other kids being affected by this. But I sat down with my daughter, I explained values-based decision making, I explained the doorman principle, and that was it. We moved on with life. 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, she came down to breakfast. It was a tense moment, and she said, Mom, Dad, I just want you to know I broke up with Trevor. And the parents were like, they didn't want to say anything as she told me the story. And the mom just simply said, why? And the girl said, because I realized he didn't align with my values. And a lifetime of chaos was ended just like that. And she said there was joy around the house. And now everybody has their values laid out, and the family has their values, and life is going on. Now, I am certain that this family probably has some issues related to other things, but at least they know values-based decision making. And to put one more layer on top of this, we know in our gut, G-U-T, God uttering truth, we know when we're making decisions that go against our values, even if we haven't done this exercise. So your gut has the ability to make yes, no decisions. Your gut is screaming no sometimes, don't marry this person. But our brain is rationalizing, well, he's got money and he comes from a good family, or she's got, the best job, or she's pretty. Don't rationalize things. Get your values lined up, match it to what your gut is saying. Thank you for listening to that, Teresa. I
Rick,
know
I've
you
heard
want to
that
dive
story.
in.
I know, I've heard that story so many times. I love that story. What family has not raised a child where at some point they know their child is not hanging out with the right people or not dating the right people, and they're holding their breath and they're suffering? One of my favorite sayings is, you are only as happy as your saddest child. And that's such an amazing story. And imagine, and this goes to the family placemat, which we'll talk about another time. Imagine if you raised your kids as they were little, teaching them the values and the decisions that they make based on their values. Just imagine, Rick, this world would be a different place, just a totally different place. And it goes back to, the faith, family, finance, and future. The family part especially is what we're talking about with that story.
Where did this all come from? Many of you know my mother had 10 babies. I was number 7. And I remember I was about 16 and I watched the massive chaos of my oldest sibling, who, was in his late 20s, and he lived this incredibly complex life from my point of view. And I watched the decisions he made. I watched the decisions my siblings made, who they lived with, who they married, who they hung out with, what career choice they chose, how much driving around and non-consequential things are they doing, drugs, alcohol, toxicity, diet, exercise. And I saw this and I said to myself, at 16, I said, there's got to be a better way. And I remember at 16, I chose simplicity. And it's why, 40 plus years later, I've never hired a friend ever to work in any business I've been involved with. For me, that's simple. I don't believe in nepotism in business, because to me, it's not simple. I know other people do, because they have a different value set than I do. But it's been clarifying for me to know. For me, nepotism and hiring friends and working with friends. I often get into deep relationships from people that I do business with that become friends. That's different. But I'm saying someone's a friend and you hire them into a business or you decide to partner with them. That to me is not simple. So having this from a really early age, this sensibility around values-based decision-making and understanding my number one value, simplicity, has given me so much fulfillment. I know you said happiness, but we talk about this often. The fulfillment is of what we want. Happiness is fleeting. We want fulfillment. Values-based decision-making is deep, but you know what? It is actually simple. And you know what? I always say, simple is not easy. It's simple to lose weight. All you have to do is eat less and exercise more, but it's not easy. And values-based decision-making is the same thing.
And before we close, Rick, I'm gonna have you, because I can never remember the quote, but Oliver Wendell Holmes, a famous jurist, had this beautiful quote about simplicity and complexity. Yep. Can you share that with us?
And values-based decision-making will help you achieve a life in alignment with this quote. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, "I wouldn't give a fig for the simplicity on this side of complexity, but I would give my life for the simplicity on the other side of complexity." And what that quote means to me is no matter how big your life is, you could have 40 great-grandchildren. If you're living on the other side of simplicity, meaning you got a big life, you have a lot going on, but it's in alignment with your purpose and values. You're on the other side. You're still simple, but you've also got a lot of weight of positivity and legacy underneath you. Most people can't get to the other side, so they stay on this side of simplicity. It's chaos and small-mindedness and chasing rabbits and chasing happiness, not being fulfilled, not being values-based in your decisions, etc. I often say people don't make the same mistake twice. They don't. They usually make it 15 or 30 times. Stop it, everyone.
Oh, Rick, this was fantastic. One of my favorite topics to hear you talk about. And I hope you all got a lot out of this conversation. I get something out of it every single time. So, Rick, thank you so much for showing up like you do and living consciously these values.
You're welcome, partner.
All right. Take care.
You have just experienced Money for Life. Implement these strategies today and create a life by design. Have a blessed day.